Okay, so get this. We're diving into Cape Town, South Africa today. And you know how we all kind of take water for granted? Well, their access to something as basic as water is totally unequal. Some people have plenty.
And others struggle to get, just a trickle.
Exactly. And we're going to be looking at some footage from this YouTube channel called Wake USUP in the Hood Productions.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And we're going to hear from residents, directly dealing with this.
Yeah, it's it's really striking because it's not a citywide water shortage.
Right.
We're talking about different levels of access within the same city.
Right.
Which, raises all sorts of questions.
Yeah.
About, how resources are managed and distributed.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the people we hear from is an elderly man. He lives in a council-owned rental home.
Okay.
And he's hit with this water bill that's twice his income.
Wow.
And they've cut off his water supply completely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's a tough situation because South Africa does have this trickle supply policy.
Right.
Which is meant to ensure everyone gets at least a minimum amount of water, regardless of, whether they can pay or not.
Right. Just enough to survive.
Yeah, exactly. The bare minimum.
Right.
But even that's not happening in this case.
Wow.
And it's not just, you actually see it in the video, no water coming out of his taps.
Yeah.
And boom, they cut to a community just 5 kilometers away where everyone has free-flowing water. It's this wild contrast.
Yeah, it's a really effective way to highlight the problem because you see it visually. It's not just an abstract concept.
Right.
It really drives home the point that this isn't just about a lack of water. This is about inequality.
Yeah.
It raises questions about fairness and social justice.
Yeah, for sure. And this resident in the video is, pretty fired up. He's claiming that cutting off water entirely, even below this trickle supply minimum, is against the law.
Oh, wow.
And even the South African Constitution. So is there any weight to that?
Well, it's definitely worth exploring. Every nation has its own laws and constitutional rights, including those related to essential resources like water.
Of course.
So it'd be interesting to see, if this resident has any legal grounds to challenge the city's actions.
Yeah.
Particularly, if the Constitution guarantees a certain level of access.
Right. So let's shift gears for a second. The video mentions something called a black budget.
Okay.
Of 8 million rand.
Oh, yeah.
That's South African currency, for anyone who's wondering.
Right.
Specifically for water sanitation and related services in townships and informal settlements.
Okay.
So that sounds like a lot of money, but is it actually making a difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. 8 million rand is a substantial amount.
Right.
But we need to go beyond the numbers.
Right.
Okay. It's crucial to investigate, how this money is being used.
Of course.
Is it reaching those who need it most?
Yeah.
Are there, bureaucratic hurdles or even corruption preventing the funds from being used effectively?
Yeah.
These are all critical questions that need answers.
That's a great point because just throwing money at a problem doesn't always solve it.
Right.
Speaking of things that don't seem to add up, the video makes this comparison that's really stuck with me.
Yeah.
It points out that prisoners in Cape Town are guaranteed access to water, food, and shelter, while some law-abiding citizens are struggling to get those same basic necessities.
That's a really thought-provoking comparison.
Yeah.
It really forces us to think, doesn't it?
It does.
About, who deserves basic human rights.
Right.
And how those rights are upheld, by the system.
Exactly.
Obviously, it's important to ensure the humane treatment of prisoners, but it does raise serious questions when those who are incarcerated are seemingly guaranteed a level of care.
Yeah.
That some law-abiding citizens are denied.
Right. It almost feels backwards.
Yeah.
You think that being a law-abiding citizen would at least guarantee you the same basic rights as someone who's been convicted of a crime.
It's a complex issue, for sure.
Yeah.
But it does highlight a potential breakdown in the social contract between the government and its citizens.
Right.
If the government isn't upholding its end of the bargain by ensuring basic needs are met, it can lead to distrust and instability.
And here's where things get even more interesting, maybe even a little paradoxical.
Okay.
The video highlights that the people facing this unequal water access actually voted for the current city government.
Oh, wow. So they voted for the people who are now seemingly failing to meet their needs.
Right. How does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a fascinating observation. It suggests that there might be other factors influencing their voting decisions.
Yeah.
Beyond just water access.
Right.
Perhaps there were other pressing issues during the election, or maybe they felt this government was the best option available.
Right.
Despite its shortcomings.
Yeah.
It could also point to a disconnect between campaign promises and actual governance.
Yeah, those are all good points, because it's not always as simple as people voting for what's directly in their best interest.
Right.
Especially when it comes to complex issues like, resource allocation.
Right.
And it makes you think about how informed voters really are.
Yes.
Especially on local issues that directly impact their lives.
Absolutely. And it highlights the importance of continuous civic engagement, not just during elections.
Right.
Citizens need to stay informed. Hold their leaders accountable.
Yeah.
Advocate for their needs, especially when it comes to essential services like water access.
Totally. I mean, we're getting a glimpse into a situation that's way more complex than just, water bills and leaky pipes.
Right.
It touches on social justice politics and even basic human rights.
It's a lot more than just inconvenience.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
It is.
This deep dive's definitely giving me a lot to think about.
Me too.
And it makes me wonder, what are the broader implications of this inequality? Does it go beyond just inconvenience?
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, when basic needs like access to clean water aren't met, it can have a ripple effect on entire communities.
Yeah.
Impacting, health, hygiene, education.
Right.
It can also hinder economic opportunities.
Right, yeah.
Which further exacerbates existing social and economic disparities.
So we're talking about a situation that can create a cycle of disadvantage.
Exactly.
Making it even harder for people to improve their circumstances.
It's a trap.
Yeah.
Unequal water access isn't just an inconvenience.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental issue that can impact every aspect of a person's life.
Yeah.
And the well-being of entire communities.
This is starting to sound like a global issue, not just something happening in CAPETOWN.
You're absolutely right. Water scarcity is a growing concern worldwide.
Yeah.
And unequal access to this precious resource is a problem in many countries.
Right.
It's a reminder that the challenges we're discussing here in CAPETOWN are not isolated incidents.
Right.
But reflect broader systemic issues that require our attention.
Yeah, for sure.
It really hits home that what we see happening over there in CAPETOWN is not just isolated, it's part of a much larger pattern.
Right.
It's this global issue of water scarcity and the inequalities that come with it.
Yeah, and it's easy to think about it, on that global scale.
Right.
But this video really personalizes it.
Yeah.
Like seeing those empty taps
Yeah.
and hearing the frustration in people's voices, it's impossible not to feel for them.
It is,
Yeah.
and they don't hold back. The video calls out the city government.
Yeah.
Uses some pretty strong language.
Yeah, they do.
Like hypocrites, even oppression.
Yeah, it's intense and the anger's palpable, and it makes you wonder, what are the long-term consequences of this kind of inequality?
Yeah.
Does it go beyond just people, being thirsty?
It definitely goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
When a basic need, like water, is unequally distributed,
Yeah.
it can really erode trust.
Yeah.
In government and institutions, people start to feel like the system isn't working for them. And that can lead to disengagement, even resistance.
And wouldn't that make it even harder to actually solve the problem?
Exactly.
If people don't trust the government, they're less likely to cooperate with solutions.
Right.
Or even believe that change is possible.
Absolutely. And then on a more, practical level, this kind of inequality can make existing social and economic disparities even worse.
Right.
Limited access to clean water can impact health, hygiene, education.
Of course.
It can even make it harder for people to find work and, lift themselves out of poverty.
So it's not just about being thirsty. It's like this cascade of negative impacts.
Right.
That can affect every aspect of life.
It's almost like a trap.
It is a trap, yeah.
It keeps people stuck in a cycle of disadvantage.
So how do we break the cycle? The video. They're really good at pointing out the problems.
Yeah.
But not so much on solutions. So what needs to happen in CAPETOWN and maybe, in other places facing similar challenges?
Well, it's a complex issue, so it's not an easy fix. It's going to require tackling it from different angles.
Okay.
So first we need to talk about infrastructure.
Okay.
Like, are there enough pipes and sanitation systems to reach everyone?
Right.
Are they properly maintained?
Yeah, that seems like a pretty basic starting point, just making sure that the physical infrastructure is there.
Right.
But even if the pipes are there, what about the water itself?
Right. Is there enough to go around?
Yeah.
That's where water management comes in.
Okay.
We need to look at things like water conservation measures,
Okay.
investing in new water sources, and addressing things like leaks and inefficient water use.
So it's this combination of having the right physical systems in place,
Right.
and then using the available water wisely.
Yes.
But even that might not be enough.
Right.
If the policies in place are actually creating barriers.
Exactly.
So we talked about that trickle supply policy earlier.
Right.
Are there other policies that might be contributing to this problem?
Well, there are many levels to consider. Are there policies that unintentionally, burden certain communities more than others?
Right.
Are there loopholes that allow for inconsistent enforcement?
Yeah.
We need to examine, the entire policy landscape.
Okay.
And ask, is it contributing to or hindering equitable water access?
So it sounds like we need lawyers and engineers working alongside policymakers to really get a handle on this.
It's a multifaceted problem.
It is. And you know what's been missing from this conversation so far?
What's that?
The voices of the people actually living this reality every day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, community engagement is crucial.
Yeah.
We can't solve this problem, from the top down.
Right.
We need to involve the communities affected, listen to their experiences,
right,
and understand their needs.
It's about tapping into that local knowledge, right?
Exactly.
They know what's working, what's not working, and what solutions might actually make a difference.
Yes, their insights are invaluable, and ultimately it comes down to a commitment to social justice.
Okay.
We need to recognize that access to clean water is a fundamental human right, not a privilege.
Right. It's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of their background or where they live,
right,
has the opportunity to thrive. This deep dive started with us looking at this video about CAPETOWN,
right,
but it's really opened my eyes to a much bigger issue.
Yeah.
It's made me think about water access here in my own community.
That's a really powerful takeaway.
Yeah.
We often think of these issues as happening somewhere else.
Right.
But the reality is, inequality exists in various forms everywhere.
So what are some things our listeners can do to learn more about water access in their own communities?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Where do we even begin to look for this information? Yeah, it does feel like, where do you even start,
Yeah, well, a good place to begin is with your local government.
Okay.
Check their website, attend city council meetings. You can even reach out to your elected officials.
Right.
They should have information, on water sources,
right,
infrastructure, and any policies related to water management.
So being proactive, going straight to the source and asking the questions.
Exactly.
But what about finding out what's already being done,
Right.
Are there groups already working on these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Look for local environmental organizations, community groups, even university research centers that are focusing on water issues.
So really tapping into those folks who are already on the ground doing the work.
Exactly. They can be a wealth of information.
Yeah.
And they can also connect you with others who are passionate about water justice.
Right. And maybe even find a way to join them.
Absolutely.
And don't underestimate the power of just starting a conversation.
Yeah.
Talk to your friends, family, neighbors.
Right.
Share what you're learning about water access and encourage them to do the same.
It's amazing how just talking about something can raise awareness.
Right.
Get people thinking.
Yeah, it's like planting a seed.
Exactly. And those seeds can grow into something powerful.
This deep dive, it started with us unpacking a video about CAPETOWN, but it's really become so much more than that.
It is.
It's about all of us, no matter where we live.
Right.
Taking a closer look at, the systems that bring us this essential resource.
Yeah, the stuff we literally can't live without.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that, water is a precious resource.
Yeah.
And it's finite.
Yeah.
And it's really our shared responsibility to ensure that it's managed fairly and sustainably.
For generations to come.
For sure.
So to wrap up, let's turn this back over to you, the listener. If this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to take that next step.
Yeah.
Do a little research.
Yeah.
Find out about water access in your own community and see what you discover.
Yeah. You might be surprised by what you learn.
And if you're feeling inspired, don't hesitate to get involved.
Yeah.
Support organizations working on water justice, advocate for policy changes.
Right.
Or even just spread awareness, among your friends and family.
Absolutely.
Every action, no matter how small, can make a difference.
For sure.
We've only just dipped our toes into this topic.
Right.
But I think it's safe to say that water access is something we all need to be paying attention to.
Couldn't agree more.
Well said. That's a wrap on our deep dive into water access, a journey that started in CAPETOWN.
Yeah.
But ultimately leads us all back to our own communities and the choices we make every day